right, welcome everybody. How are we doing today? All right, so welcome to the AI Meetup. This is our monthly meetup, as you guys know. I'm Tim May, I host it. We're going to be doing something a little different today. We're going to do 3 different small presentations. I'm going to kick off and talk a little bit about Claude Code. So it's a little techy, but I'll try to keep it in high level enough that it might be of general interest to folks just wanting a little more powerful tool than they might have using the online browser-based access to ChatGPT or Claude. And then we're going to have Sonny Clark do a little demo of some AI stuff that he's working on. And then JJ is, where's JJ? There he is, way at the back. JJ's going to talk a little bit about what he's doing in his company, which is an interesting application of AI image processing. So we have a little bit of a mix-up. Questions are welcome. What we want to do is if anybody has a question, you want to be my runner, Noah? If you have, raise your dance, whatever you want. Get his attention, and then he'll come bring you the mic. That way, we're recording these for our Tech Alley YouTube channel, so your questions make it into the video so they can be heard. So, show of hands, how many people have ever used just Claude online in the browser? Oh, good, quite a bit. How many of you have actually tried to use Claude Code, the console-based? Good, more than I expected, that's excellent. So what we're going to be talking about today is sort of an example of using Claude Code in a non-trivial project. So first I should define what I mean by non-trivial. A lot of coding, vibe coding examples you see online are what I would call trivial examples, where they take a small problem that's very easily tractable, something that a junior programmer should be able to do in a day or two, and they'll pop it out in 10 minutes or less, you know, build a snake game, something like that. These are very small scale projects. They don't have a lot of moving parts. They're not really pushing the boundaries of the kinds of depth of information available in an LLM. So what I wanted to do today was show you a project that I'm working on where we've used Claude Code to tackle something a little bit larger. Show of hands, how many people are familiar with what a REST protocol is? A few, okay. REST is a big deal. When you have a website and it presents an API, an application programming interface that client applications can call, that...
Whose phone is that?
He managed. I thought I was winning, you know, at the casino.
You were winning some money.
Yeah, you're right. That's good. So a REST API is a collection of endpoints that clients call to say, hey, give me the weather, or do whatever, add this customer in my database, that kind of thing. We can describe that interface using a specification format called OpenAPI, not to be confused with OpenAI, right? OpenAPI. It used to be called Swagger. And this is a format, it can be in JSON or YAML format, but it's basically a list of all the inputs and also a list of all of the data transfer objects that are going to be exchanged between the client and the host, right? So we have a way of saying, hey, here's what this API does for us. Here are all the things you can ask it to do. So that API specification can be used, and generally is used, in 2 different ways. One is documentation. So you take an existing website, you run a tool on it, and it generates that specification file, and then you share it with programmers. And now they have a definitive guide on how to use your host to do things, right? Yes, Thomas.
Just for clarity, can you explain what the purpose of an API is and how you're using it in the context of this application?
So an API, whenever you have a client calling a host in the cloud to ask it to do something, you're calling an API of one kind or another.
Can you define client?
Client would be like a web application or a mobile app.
As opposed to like the back end, like
Or
the
it could be
services?
another server at another location making a call. It doesn't have to be an end user device.
So typically the API is used to talk to from your application to the back end, and it's
Right.
how you get the things that you want from your back end.
Does anybody else have a question about that, or did that it was a good question, by the way. Does that help? Okay.
And on REST, it's HTTP.
REST is HTTP, that's correct, which is a hypertext transfer protocol, which has been the foundation of the web forever. Essentially, it allows us to have one way of establishing a connection with a server and transmitting a request to it and getting a response back that we can process, right? So it's fairly simple. Anyway, what I wanted to do with Claude Code was say, okay, here's my business requirement. So I have a business requirement document, which says these are the parties, these are the actors involved in this business. So I have a business, I have a consumer, I have a matching service, I have a variety of different pieces of this business application that's going to be hosted. I want you to take that and apply standard business principles, typical kinds of processes for each of these entities, and let's generate the API. So I'm asking Claude to go from a general business description to a concrete implementable API specification, right? What's cool about that is that you end up with a fairly elaborate, let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, all right, here you go. This is what we got generated, okay? So it created an admin API. You need an admin API to be able to manage your system, right? We've got the match API. What we're doing is we're looking for matches between consumer needs and products and services being offered by vendors. We have a consumer API where individual consumers can, from their, say, mobile app or from a web application, sign up and maybe say, here's what I'm looking for. We have a business API where businesses can sign up. And we have a public API for those things that don't need authentication, right? So we have all these different APIs that are potentially used by one or more of these clients. So we had, in this particular first cut, we had 53 endpoints, which is not huge, but it's not trivial. And we have over 200 data transfer objects. A DTO is basically, here's a chunk of data, a particular kind of data that I'm going to share back and forth. So it's, you might transmit it to the server, or the server might transmit it to you. Right? So those are your data transfer objects. These are the coins of the realm of building web applications. I know it sounds techy, but it's not so much I want you to understand all the details. What I want you to come away from this is that, okay, here's a mid-size web service that's being built, and we've asked Claude Code to go in and generate an open API specification, and then out of that, we're going to go ahead and build the back end. So far, so good? Question? Yes, Tom.
So what did it specifically generate in this case? Was it the contract between the application and the back end? Or did you have it write all the code?
It's weird that this doesn't, why have my solution there? It's so strange. All right, so to answer that question, let's take a look. Let's see what it generated. We have, and this is not stuff that most people in here are going to care about, but here's an example of an open API specification. And everybody goes, oh, yuck. And yeah, you should, because it's like kind of detailed. But essentially what you've got is a big text file with a list of all the endpoints and all the data transfer object types, right? So there's maybe 3,000 lines code that, or the specification that was generated. It's kind of a big chunk. Now, the next thing we do with that is once we have that open API specification, we have to implement it, right? So in my case, I have a tool that I use. It's called Lazy Magic, and it reads open API specifications along with another file that describes the architecture that we want to deploy, in this case to AWS. And you go up and you hit Tools, and we do Lazy Magic Generate. And so this will run through, and waiting for it. There it is, boom. Just generated dozens and dozens of C# projects and infrastructure, updated them. So once you have that backbone generated, then you can go in and start to extend the back-end business logic that was initially created. We do something called CRUDL. Anybody know what CRUDL is? We have one. Okay, create, read, update, delete, and list. Pretty basic, right? So that's a lot of what you do when you talk to, hey, say, I want to see a list of all my customers, or I want to see a list of all my prospects. You're asking for a list. Oh, I want to edit, so you're doing an update. Or you're creating a new one, create, right? So it's just create, read, update, delete, and list. So what did it generate? Well, if we go back into our Solution Explorer, we have, this is a Visual Studio solution, and in it there are many, many projects. Most of those were generated, so all of these projects here were generating. See, they kind of parallel the APIs that we talked about having, the admin, and we have an authorization, business, consumer, match, and public, right? And inside there, each of those has a whole bunch of individual code classes that have been generated to handle each of the different types of data objects and the ability to take the data that's been transmitted to it and save it into a database, or take it from a database and send it back to the client.
Okay.
So one of the things that we learn when we start to use Claude Code is how to get the most of it. Let me show you Claude Code to start with. What is Claude Code? Claude Code is a command line interface, meaning that we crank it up in a PowerShell or equivalent console, and we type in Claude and it brings up an interface, and you talk to it through the command line. Particularly interesting here is you can give it commands, like if I start to type in / you'll see it opens up with all the different commands available. One of them is context, which we already had done just a moment ago, but helps if you type it into the box. All right, so this is kind of clever. Everybody probably here that's tracking LLMs at all knows what a context is, right? It's the whole, the amount of information that you're transmitting to the LLM with your prompt. So there's the prompt and maybe some other stuff that go along with it. In the case of Claude Code, when you run it, you're running it in a folder. Everybody knows what an operating system folder is, right? So the idea is it can read everything in the folders and subfolders, and it creates an index to all those information. And then when you ask it a prompt, it can go and look through the folders to collect the information that's relevant, puts that all in the call that it's making to the LLM to give the LLM enough context, information to be able to return some kind of useful product, okay, useful work. And in this case, you can see that we have a context that's shown as a little square. What's cool about it is it's showing you how much of the 200,000 token limit you're currently using. 200,000 tokens sounds like a lot, but you can run out of space. But you can see here that it breaks down. You got the system prompt, which is Claude Code's general prompt for here's how I want you to work with this user. It's the general backbone. It's not very big, but it uses a little bit of the context. And then you've got system tools, memory files, messages, and free space. As we start to do things with Claude Code, it adds to the context. And every time you have a conversation, it goes back and forth, this context will be used up until it reaches a point where it's run out of space, at which point it'll do something called a compaction. What's that? So we'll just run it here. So force it to do a compact. Normally this would happen when I run out of context space, but you can do it anytime you want. So this frees up enough space so it'll keep the most relevant parts of the previous conversation and then allow you to start adding more and more to the context. Maybe you've sort of gone from working in one area to another area, and it'll let you do that. I want to show you one of the tricks that you can use. It doesn't have to be in coding, by the way. You can use it for almost any kind of process where you have a collection of documents and you've parked code on top of it, and you say, hey, I want to do these kinds of research in these documents. I want to generate a new document from these documents. I want to go through and extract all of the information relevant to a particular subject, and I want to put it in a new document, right? Those kinds of things. And it'll do a great job of that. But sometimes it doesn't really know exactly what you want. So as you work with it, I'm sure everybody who's used ChatGPT has experienced this, you say, no, I didn't mean that kind of cat, I meant this kind, whatever. And it goes through an iterative process, and after some number of prompts, it gets a better idea of what you're really looking for. So what you're doing is creating an alignment between your need and its ability to understand and respond to that need. So what you can do is you can take a look at a conversation and say, hey, look, I've told you 5 times to stop doing that, do it this way, right? In code, we always say, no, don't do it that way. Well, one of the things you can do is you can create a file. Say Markdown is just a way to store text files that makes it easy to read. And it says, okay, I want you to go back to our conversation, look at all the ways I've told you I want it to work. I want you to create a file that captures those heuristics. And pay attention to that file going forward. Now, whenever I ask you to do something of this kind, read that file and make sure you follow the instructions. So I did it for the repositories in the back end that read the database. Let me get out of this stuff. I'm going to show you. Here you go. Anti-patterns. Don't create wrapper repositories. Don't put business logic in controllers. Don't modify generated files. Migration guide. So those are some of the things. So this is like how many lines? I can't really see, but I'm having a hell of a time with this mouse. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so the idea is there that we've got one file. Another one that's even more interesting is the OpenAPI. Where is it?
Second item.
No, it was the API. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I want to show you this I love. Schema organizations always extract inline types. You don't care what it means exactly. But what we're saying is, there's a particular way I want you to express the OpenAPI specification so as to make it generate on the back end the code that I want rather than some alternative. So it said, hey, this is bad, this is good. Makes it very readable, right? So you could imagine that you're processing a bunch of documents, maybe the HR document, something like that. You say, look, I never want you to do this, I always want you to do that. So it creates these little rules. This is in code, but in your case, it might just be, I always want to use this particular language around any termination procedure, or whatever it might be, right? So you can set all these rules up, and then you don't have to go through that iterative prompt process many times to get to the level of alignment where the LLM's giving you what you want. Does that make sense? Right? Okay, so just to give you a thumbnail on productivity, you hear a lot about vibe coding. Everybody's heard about vibe coding, right? Anybody not know what vibe coding is? Okay, so the idea around vibe coding is people sit down and they start with ideas, and they do an iterative thing. They move gradually toward an application. They let the LLM build most of the code. And it's sort of like, well, let's just kind of, as we're going along, oh, I don't like the way that works, I'm going to try this instead. And so it just morphs and goes in different directions based on kind of an interactive, let's try it, fail fast, try again, oh, I like that, keep going, until you build a whole application. So it's many back and forths. Vibe coding in the hands of a junior programmer is dangerous as hell, because they don't tend to do what they need to do next, which is read the code. What did it actually generate? You can't just assume the code generated is all that useful. Just like if you're an HR professional, you wouldn't have it write a termination letter and just send it out without looking at it, right? There's still that human review necessary. When we move to non-trivial tasks, like the one that I've described here in very broad arm-wavy fashion, this would have taken, I have built systems like this in the past, a team of like 3 or 4 people, 6 months. It's that big. I've gotten to about maybe half the way through the process in a matter of 5 days of coding. And the code being generated, this is with me looking at every line of code generated, understanding what it's doing, telling it, no, 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 do it this way. So there's been that interactive kind of clean up your act along the way process. And what I like about this coding process is that you don't end up taking shortcuts. When you're under a crunch, say you're building something to get it out the door really quick. Did it go away? Sorry. There you go. No, it was just because it timed out. I put on battery. The point I was trying to make there is that when you're doing rapid prototyping and trying to get something out the door, you often skip a lot of the what seems like unnecessary stuff. The documentation, right? A lot of comments, maybe not a complete test suite, whatever. There's all sorts of ways people cut corners. When you're using an LLM, because the cost of regeneration of even large parts of your system is very low, you never have to skimp. You can literally go at rapid prototyping speed, but when you get to the other end, you don't have to go back and now do a pass to that second implementation to make it more efficient and to close all those little gaps that you kind of skipped over because you wanted to get a proof of concept done. And that's been particularly true in this environment. Claude Code has made it really straightforward to have a lot of very rapid development, and the code generated is usually within 80% of what I need. Yes, sir?
Are you using Claude more like a pair programmer, or are you just interrogating Claude?
I use Claude Code to generate code, so yes, I guess you would call it a pair programmer.
A pair programmer.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a taste of Claude Code, so if anybody's interested, they can maybe take a look at it. It may or may not fit your needs. I would also mention that command line interface, I actually have Visual Studio up, which is a full integrated development environment, lots of stuff, and it has Copilot in it that I don't use. And then I'm running Claude Code on the side. So as I modify the files, they're automatically, those changes are picked up and presented in Visual Studio. So I don't pay any penalty for it being outside as a command line environment. And there are, command line interface, there are trade-offs, but I haven't found it to be much of a problem. There are also CLI tools that aren't tied to Anthropic. And now Cursor has introduced a CLI. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but you can use it to hook up not just to the OpenAI backend, but they can actually use, I understand Claude as a backend, and maybe your own local model, maybe you're running a local coding tool. All right, so covered a lot of ground there. Questions? This one. Oh, here we go.
Oh, sorry.
You mentioned a lot of the, I guess, quality control as you finish vibe coding, and you need an actual developer to kind of run through things. Say a founder doesn't have a full-time hire, what are the specific criteria you should be looking for hiring like a part-time or some sort of developer to do that quality check for you?
That's a really good question. I guess I wouldn't recommend that somebody without some level of skill in this area that's built applications before just try to use any of the tools just to generate apps. However, there are loads of app generators. That's a different thing, where they take relatively simple applications and build most of them for you. So if you have one of those and all you're doing is embellishing, maybe you don't need a special programmer on the side. But if you're going to build something where none of those sort of simple application generators are sufficient, then yeah, you should probably look for somebody that has the usual set of skills. The criteria for that is they've done it before, they know how to use the code tools, and the other thing too is it's hard to find somebody just to come in and look at what you've done and clean it up. Most coders wouldn't want to do that because it's not fun work. So you might want to engage somebody earlier and focus on using the tool to generate business requirement documents that truly capture all the feature and functionality you want in your app. Because that's by the way, that's the hardest thing in app development or application development in general, is making sure that you have a complete, comprehensive understanding of the feature set, what every feature does. And there's loads of ways in which tools like Claude Code can help you generate those. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Just a comment about that particular question. One thing I would add would be some level of language specificity in that individual, especially if you're dealing with things like Java, where the virtual machine works in such a way, having that underpinning knowledge of how Java operates is pretty critical for reviewing the validity of the design that's being done.
Very true.
But I 100% want to make sure everyone understands that any code generated by any LLM at this point, and there are lots, we've talked about Claude here, and there are plenty of others, human curation by an actual engineer, software engineer, is critical, because there's absolute garbage that can get generated from an LLM. And you cannot, give up your, especially if it's going to be your livelihood in the form of an application, right, or your business's livelihood. You do not want some rogue code running somewhere that somebody can access.
I think the term is mess around and find out.
Yeah. I think it's a different acronym, but it's close enough.
anyone else have a?
This one here.
I use Cursor, and I tend to go through each code, like all the changes, code block by code block,
Sure,
accept,
of course.
reject, or,
Yeah.
can you do something similar with Claude Code, or you just have to accept all the changes?
Well, the
or
way it
using,
works
like,
is
version
as
control?
you ask it to make a change or an enhancement, and it shows you in the console using plus minuses the lines it's going to remove, the lines it's going to add. It'll tell you, it'll give you a whole outline of what it's going to do before it does it. You can go in a planning mode so it doesn't change any code until you've iterated through in the conversation to the point where you think it understands what you really want. So these are similar kinds of capabilities that are in Cursor, for instance. The reason I used to use Cursor a lot, and I found it to be okay on very simple things, but it fell apart as soon as I got to larger efforts. And the reason for that is, interesting enough, one of monetization. Bet you didn't expect me to say that. See, the Cursor has a model where you pay $20 a month, let's say. They will do everything they can so that the back-end cost of providing you the service is under that.
You can actually put your
You can
API
now-
keys in,
now you can.
for the different
you can,
models.
now you pay as you go, right?
Yeah.
But unless you do that, it's going to throttle you down and use prompt caching and a bunch of other techniques to make sure. So when people say, yeah, but it's only $20 a month compared to like $100 a month for Claude Code. Well, with Cursor, you'd have to say, okay, which model am I using? What's my API key cost going to be when I use it? But yeah, when you do that, and I haven't yet, I want to try it, it probably would be a little better. There's one more at the back. We haven't got your dongle yet, Sonny, so I don't know what.
I'm just wondering if anybody has had any experience or success with kind of pitting these models against one another kind of thing, like where you generate some stuff from one model and then have another model kind of review it, you know? Is that successful? Is that working?
I use Claude. Actually, I should speak into the mic. This was actually a good follow-on. I had an aggregate for many of these. So,
Hold it closer here.
me and Tim work on similar projects, but my strategy is somewhat different. In terms of your comment of like reviewing, having code reviewed, I think Tim's spot on. No one's going to want to do that because the biggest problem, as you're saying, like when it comes down to code, who's the best person to review what's written? Senior architect. Yep. Anyone else is a joke and actually is more likely to cause huge problems. I totally disagree with something Tim said earlier that you get 60% of the way there and it's all wonderful. I think it's the opposite. I think it's 60% of the way there and then it's nightmare mode. How the heck do you get the rest of the 40%? Because if it looks done to any programmer, it is done. And the biggest problem is getting people to look at the code if it looks done. And 90% of the time you are scrayed. It is a horribly difficult situation to get a senior dev to actually read every line. It's super unusual. They're not going to want to do it. So that he's going to follow on with deterministic generators.
No.
Deterministic generators and no, because that's his whole shtick is like that's what lazy magic is a deterministic generator and patterns, right? So you can tell the LLM these are the safe patterns. You will only use these safe patterns, and then I want to see you apply these throughout the system. That's really where you have the senior dev come in. You have the senior dev come in at the beginning. You tell him what you're trying to do. He'll select the technologies. He'll give you the safe patterns. You go spaghetti roll, and then you bring it back and beg, and maybe he'll actually look at it. If he doesn't, right, you're really in trouble. Here's the way that you can close that gap the rest of the way. Test-driven development.
Yeah.
Test-driven development is everything it always was. I don't know why nobody cared, right? And it really was project managers would force code through pipelines, and it would never get tested. There'd never be unit tests. Here's the thing. You write your tests first. You write very good, very deterministic tests. You work with the LLM to determine all edge cases, right? And then you build to tests, and then it's really hard to mess things up. That's why you have that's why you have a test environment. And that should usually work, although there are some situations where you might get in trouble.
You can have your LLM like put in the doc string for the tests for someone who's not a coder, just like layman's terms as to what it is. And so you can run through you can write the tests. Like a test is basically like a functionality that needs to pass essentially for the software to work. And then even if it's spaghetti code, it's like it'll still work and run. So.
The dirty little secret out there is that a very large portion of the code out there in production systems is spaghetti code. It's never been tested properly. So it's not like we don't field systems that are really not there yet on a regular basis. What you have is an opportunity when you're using an LLM to fill in those gaps and follow, some of like the test-driven development methodologies. And the nice thing about test, remember I said the business requirements document is key? What is a test suite? It's a requirements document when you get right down to it. This is what the code has to do. If it passes all these tests and you've been able to make those tests comprehensive, yay! And then if the code works, then the review process is there anything here that's not going to make the code work? Was an efficient algorithm used? Were appropriate coding standards applied? Is it secure? So those kinds of things become more important.
I think we've actually reached the point where we found our disagreement. I think the advantage of the old style was that when stuff wasn't done, it didn't look done. And now the problem is that everything looks done, so it's really hard to find.
So you're saying that the code generated by LLMs looks good. It's a 10 dressed up like a 3 dressed up like a 10.
I would not put it that way near HR, but I'm sure it is functional as an analogy.
Yeah, okay.
It's a fancy hood on a slow car.
Another question.
Yeah, and then
If we're questioning like the viability of code that's generated, right? Then how can we ensure that the code generated for our tests is where that needs to be, right? Okay.
So the point of a unit test is scope, right? So when you reduce something down to its most trivial metrics, you're able to look at it and investigate it more easily. And the point of testing all edge cases is to say that all of these features of this method return exactly the thing. It's like input validation. Why perform input validation? If you can't be sure you've covered every edge case, I'd say skill issue, write it better. So like you're the one the buck has to stop somewhere in terms of the accountability for managing the tool, right? And although
that'll do it, man. All right, let's get you set up.
Much higher skill requirements to fell the deer than a firearm, right? At the end of the day, you're still aiming it. So it's really about aiming it appropriately, ensuring you do have good coverage, being skeptical, having good prompt engineering, and just not letting the LLM blow smoke. Because a lot of the time it will just say things that are nonsense, and you have to be willing and ready to challenge it and use prompt engineering to.
So Thomas is an example of yes, you can be trained. So I'm gonna have to cut it short because I want to get Sonny a chance to display. So this is Sonny Clark,
Yes.
and I will turn it over. Let's see if we can get you set up here. It should just recognize your device, and then you need to share your screen. Other than that, you should be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Take it away, Sonny. Oh. Put this in your.
How do I do this?
Just click it on.
I'll like that. Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. All right, let me just remember what I was going to say. All right, so the first things is that AI is amazing. You probably already know that, but let me kind of give a little bit more description. Recently, GPT OSS became open source about August 5th, and since then, my name is Sonny Clark. I'm a full stack app developer. So I do web, I do backend, front end, I do iOS, I do Android. So like a one-man app agency. So I was just so busy working, I didn't really get into the AI stuff until about August 5th when ChatGPT open sourced their models, which was really, really interesting. And so once I started doing that, once I understood what was going on, I couldn't stop working. So I've been working on things, combining multiple models together and just seeing, what could be achieved. So I'm going to be demonstrating 2 demos. But but let me explain. So LLMs, I think this is the biggest thing since the web server. I really feel so because there's so much value to be made. But the key thing is, it's not just in the LLM itself. It's in the use of the other part of the product. So as a product developer, there's a lot I can go with it, which is really, really exciting. So let me explain what the two demos are going to be. So so in the 80s and 90s, you had programming, and then they added the UI layer, right, which we all know. And so, let's say like Windows 95 was like the real first, UI mass adopted application. So this is good, but then you kind of run into enterprise software, which kind of gets difficult because you have a lot of menu screens. And even though you can have a nice UI, you can't get around the fact that if you have an app with like 20 features, it's going to take time to learn. So I realized in the future, what's going to happen is the UI and the AI, in my opinion, is as big as the UI. So you have generative UI, which is really, really interesting to think about. And I think this is going to be what makes mass adoption for enterprise and much more complicated apps. Like we all go to the doctor's office and you have to fill out a bunch of forms. And I think with AI, we can automate that and make that experience seamless. So in these two demos, I'm going to show a report and I'm going to show an automated sales assistant. So in this example, imagine that you own a store and you have about, I don't know, like 500 transactions in the last 3 months. So as a software developer, and I'm pretty sure you've seen that, where you have a dashboard, I've got the financial dashboard, and there's like 20 different modules, and there's so much UI to build, and as a developer, this is like rough for us, because every little thing we got to build and test, and financial dashboards have so many things. But what if instead of having me have to program every financial dashboard, what if you could just speak, and it could just generate the report on the fly? So here I have a metric, revenue, profit, tax, then I have groups, and then I have dates, and then I have a sorting. So I'll say something like, show me profit by products last month sorted from low to high. And I'm also using AI to auto-transcribe the audio, because I do think speaking will be the new interface, so to speak. So I can say, show me revenue by states this month sorted from low to high. And now I can just speak and generate all the reports I need. I can save them. I never have to. So what I want you to imagine is like when you look at an application, there's a bunch of menu links, there's a bunch of pages, you got to drill down, you got to remember that. And this might be fine for one application, but as you know, we use several applications, right? Now in the future, instead of you having to remember all that UI in your brain, you can just say, what does this app do? Oh, it does this. Now I can just speak to it and it'll generate the UI on the fly and give me what I need. So this is, I don't know, pick a metric, pick one.
Tax.
Tax, okay, show me tax, and then you pick a group.
By city.
City, okay. And it's smart enough to know city or cities, and I can say last month, and then submit, and then it just updates. So if I say, this month, it updates.
What speech system are you using?
Right now I'm using 11 Labs, but I'm going to roll my own. No, actually I do. Right now for this demo I'm using 11 Labs, I'm using OpenAI's Whisper, but I actually have Whisper running on my own. There's so much open source software, it's insane. So, like there's too much you can do with it. All right, so this is neat. The other one, which I think is a little bit more exciting, is product. And this is something that every startup on the planet, in my opinion. So what I want you to imagine, even if you buy like a toaster from Walmart, you have booklets, and we all have questions, right? And when we go to the mall, where's Burger King? All this stuff. We have this question. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just talk to something and it could speak back to you and answer those questions? So in this demo, I'm going to use an app that we all know called Zoom. I'm not actually going to use the app, but imagine you're on the Zoom landing page and you got some questions like, what is Zoom? What is it about? And I'm going to do 3 questions, and it's going to show that it can demonstrate what a normal conversation is. Pick a number 1 through 5.
3.
Okay. Tell me 3 features about Zoom. It's going to take a second because it's got to transcribe and. Oh, sorry. Let me increase the volume here.
Zoom meetings deliver HD video, audio, and screen sharing for up to 1,000 participants in a single call. Breakout rooms let the host instantly split attendees into separate discussion groups for focused collaboration. The AI companion provides real-time assistance, summarizing chats, generating notes, and offering smart prompts during meetings.
I'll do this again, 1 second. Oh, that's cool. Tell me more about breakout rooms.
Breakout rooms let the host instantly divide a meeting into up to 50 separate sessions for small group collaboration, with options to assign participants manually or automatically, and to move them between rooms as needed. The host can broadcast messages to all rooms, set timers, and join any room for live monitoring. This feature works seamlessly in both meetings and webinars.
And now I'm going to ask a question to show conversation. So I'm going to ask about breakout rooms without mentioning the phrase breakout rooms. And this is one of the powers of LLMs. It has context, reference, and memory. Oh, wow, that's really neat. Can you list me like 3 or 4 industries that this might be applicable? I'm trying to see if this might work for my small business. And speaking is just so much more natural. You can speak so much faster than you can type, so yeah, and once I get right now I'm doing the audio transcription off 11 Labs, but I'm going to run my own AI and this will go
Breakout rooms are great for 1. Education, virtual classrooms, group projects, and tutoring sessions. 2. Professional services, law firms, consulting agencies, or accounting teams running client workshops or internal brainstorming. 3. Healthcare and wellness teletherapy groups, patient support circles, or staff training. 4. Creative and media design studios, marketing agencies, or production teams collaborating on concepts and storyboards.
Give me an industry.
Rocket science.
Rocket science, okay. I have a company that's in rocket science. How might Zoom help this company?
Where's the vector database at? Is it in the cloud?
There's no vector database. It's just, no, it's LLM. It's in the prompt.
Engineers and scientists collaborate in real time with HD video, screen sharing, and remote control for design reviews and simulations. Breakout rooms and the whiteboard enable focused team subgroups to troubleshoot subsystems or run mission planning workshops, while AI Companion can generate instant meeting summaries and action items. Recording and secure waiting room and security features ensure critical discussions are archived safely for compliance and future reference.
And I've come up with a new term, which is called business intelligence. A lot of these AI agents aren't really agents, they're automators. So you use the same service and prompt for every single thing. It doesn't know anything about your particular business. And this is an example of like how I can set something up and say, oh, it knows about your business. It knows about Zoom. You can ask questions. Eventually this will link to auto form complete, schedule demo. I think this is how all startups will have their landing page, because you can speak much faster and it's available 24/7, which I think is pretty neat. But yeah, so that's basically it.
Questions, and then I'm going to give JJ a chance to come
Cool.
up. So, questions? Oh, you did such a good job there making questions.
In terms of getting this speed down technically, because obviously being able to have a fluid conversation is really going to be the thing that gives it the cachet that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Technically, how are you going to achieve that?
There's open source text to speech. I've run some of it. The other thing about all this, it's very expensive to run it on the server. So like the GPU is kind of like the CPU of the 70s. It's not democratized yet. That's why NVIDIA is worth a lot of money. It's just not affordable yet. But in my opinion, it's still worth it. I'm paying a pretty penny per an hour, paying like $6 to $10 an hour just to test these things, because I just want that speed and want that fluidity. But yeah, I'm going to use an open source text to speech. I used one before. It takes a second, but I got to put it on my GPU server. I've been going crazy on this for the last 4 to 6 weeks, and it's just a lot just to learn how to do something in 5 minutes.
Do you feel like that it'll ever make sense cost-wise in the next maybe 2 years, or do you think it'll continue to stay prohibitively expensive? Because like when I'm running my own stuff, like I'm very concerned about keeping Lambdas hot and running like GPU processes. Like I want to be as far.
Yeah. So to be very specific, so yeah, this gets into another conversation. So basically, the LLM is going to be the CPU. Mm-hmm. So you got like all these AI open source models, and the LLM is going to take the most resources, but it's going to be the one that reroutes traffic. Do we need to generate text? Do we need OCR? All those sort of things. Do we need text to speech? So with the exception of LLM, you can run this a lot on a server. You know what I mean? You may even can do a low GPU server. I'm using a high-end GPU server because I just want that speed. But Yeah, so with that, you're going to be able to do, I think it'll eventually come down, but it's pretty expensive. It's about like, to run a solid LLM, because I'm running the 120 billion parameter, that costs like nearly $2,000 a month full time, you know, and so I think it'll eventually come down, but I do think this is arguably like the biggest moment in my opinion, and I just found this out because I'm always having conversations with ChatGPT. So the 120 billion parameter came open source August 5th, right? For reference, OpenAI had started with 175 billion parameter like 3 years ago, and they broke the record of getting 1 million active users within 5 days. So they just open source something that's within the ballpark of what they launched with and made all that money with. And so I think that's a huge deal. There's a bunch of 20 billion parameters. The other flip side of this is you have Falcon, you have Mistral, you have all these other open source, or Llamas, which is known, but they aren't license free. There's some weird thing, like you can't just, even if you make an amazing app, you can't just go off and do it. With these models you can. And that to me got me super excited, and I lose sleep because of it. But yeah, sure.
So you're saying this is available now?
The GPT OSS, yes. ChatGPT, and you know, because we're all familiar with ChatGPT, I was like, I want to use that model. You know what I mean? I don't know about the other models. Maybe they're good, but I'm just so familiar with the cadence. And I noticed, in my opinion, that ChatGPT's AI model is like more user-friendly, has context and reference. You know, the example I give is if I'm like, hey, I want to get a big juicy burger, Grok will be like, well, this is what Wendy's has, this is what Burger King has, but it doesn't know what I'm trying to do. And ChatGPT may even spit out less, but be referenced. But yeah, it's called GPT OSS. They released 2 models, 20 billion parameter, 120 billion parameter. This is the 120 billion parameter because I just like it more.
Could I have it again? I want to.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's it.
No, I want to say it again because
okay. Okay. The GPT OSS, 120 billion parameter, 20 billion parameter.
And then I can do what you just did.
Yeah, you have access to the model. Yeah.
So, Bill, we're going to do JJ. JJ, we're going to come up and talk for a minute. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to get some more. Yeah, I'll be here. I got another demo, and I got another demo at 1 p.m.
Here you go. Whoops, sorry. Here you go. Just introduce yourself and talk a little bit.
Yeah, do we want to, I sent an email with the video, or just go for it? Okay, no problem. Yeah, so my name's JJ. Me and my friends are working on building a startup that's basically making sports data more accessible for all. We were recently approached by a streaming service that focuses on niche Olympic sports. And they were looking to see if we could build a custom AI model specifically for their streaming platform to calculate a metric called row rate, which basically means how many rows does the rowing team do within 60 seconds. And doing this live and without hardware, and doing it directly through their stream and their cameras alone. And so we've gotten to a certain point, and I met Tim, and he was able to see the video of where we were able to build this thing out. And there was, of course, as you guys, with all those challenges, a lot of challenges. How the heck do we figure this thing out? Camera angles, camera distance, how do we do that? Can't use pose detection, the AI skeleton overview, just because of the variables. It's just not going to be able to pick it up. So we came up with the idea of, well, what about the splashes that these rowers create? You could clearly, they're distinct enough from all these different angles, distance, close, super far away, and we were able to do that and come up with this crazy solution. We're at 96% accuracy as of right now, and of course when it comes to data, we have to be able to get it closer to 99, but we're making progress, and our model is able to calculate row rate within 10 seconds as well, and we don't need that full 60 seconds. So yeah, that's pretty much.
So JJ, can you just kind of give us a few other examples of where AI could be applied in sports measurement of,
Yeah.
different sports and how you
I
guys are
mean,
looking at
as of right now, a lot of the major sports you see, if you guys watch broadcasts of baseball, football, basketball, AI computer vision is literally there, right? That's how they calculate spin rate, right? If you guys don't know what that is, spin rate of the baseball is literally how many spins does it do coming out of the pitcher's hands or off the bat, right? Soccer is the same thing, where soccer, they use computer vision technology or even just hardware AI to calculate like their distance, right, from running around the whole field. So for us, with our approach, we wanted to focus on sports that are getting overlooked. So initially, actually, we pivoted to focus on this opportunity just because it was just like, I couldn't say no for this deal, but we were actually going to focus on softball pitching because there's no computer vision model for those mechanics. And of course, there isn't really any documentation for rowing at all when it comes to using computer vision, so we literally we're grinding away to kind of build this thing literally from scratch. So there's so many opportunities with it. So.
What vision system are you using? Using Intel's Open Vision? Who's your vision library?
OpenCV.
OCV.
OpenCV.
OpenCV.
That was majority of it.
Are you using intelligent cameras? I mean, are you using like RealSense or anybody?
Ideally, that would be the situation where we could. Because of the situation of the company that we're working with, it won't be in this first iteration. Potentially down the road, because there's a lot of logistics and cost and because they do events nationwide. So it's a lot of cost with that. So by solely focusing on software, we're able to lower their costs, but also, like for instance, we could get to the certain point where we could calculate speed, even with just software, if we just have a location of where the rowing event is happening from there.
Yeah, could you get more into the details of the technical implementation of how you did it? Like, are you writing to the APIs or like how?
So to be frank, I'm just a data analytics engineer. My team, they're into that, but they have a lot more info. So I wish I was more educated. I'm learning a lot from them, but I just don't have a lot of the technical lingo down.
OpenCV, then he's probably just doing detection on splashes. So anything that looks like a splash, the AI puts a bounding box around it, so does this look like a splash? And then it makes a guess, and then that's what the system is.
Programmatically, how do you do that? Like, are you?
Yeah, so we had to track the boat. So there was a number of different things that we had to like train our model for, right? 1, splashes, 2, the boat. Yeah, no, seriously, there's literally nothing out there. So we had to really be creative with like, we were even looking in different like academic articles of what was one? How a scientific team was looking at birds' food thing by them splashing water into the pool. You know, so there's a lot of different things that we're pulling from to really put this thing together. But programmatically, it's more of like, yeah, we have to find the boat first. What's the boat? Create an ROI around it and tend to then be able to say, what's a splash? And then on top of that, we had to train it to, because there's the aftermath of the waves from the splashes being created, how do we separate those lingering ones to the one that's being created right then and there as the oar is literally going into the water? Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah.
With all that information, that data, obviously that's a niche with rowing or crew. In regards to baseball, football, tennis, lacrosse, from a collegiate level, maybe professional level, have you worked with any businesses? What are they using it from a business standpoint? Like, is recruiters using this information, and they're making, valuable decisions? I'm going to recruit this player based off of the metrics that I've gathered here, or are baseball teams like, hey, we're going to change our strategy on how we play as a team and everything like that? Like, what business value have you seen from this data that you're producing?
So we could definitely, there's a lot. So the initial hypothesis of myself, I actually played baseball growing up pretty competitively. And interesting enough, the sports world is very, very similar to our professional lives, right? And how we work our way up into building our own names, right? To get the next job or to learn. How do we learn to get better, either in Python or computer vision? So there's a recruiting aspect to it. There's a personal training aspect to it. There is strategy, right? When it comes down to it, what is the other team doing? Can we break down the data for that to then come up with a game plan for us? So there's a number of different levels. So training.
I get all that, but are you leasing it out? Like, hey, I have all this new information. I know how to gather it, right? Are you leasing those services to other businesses?
So in this case, so for us, we're right now solely focusing on the rowing, and yes, we will be licensing it out to the company. And for them, this particular company, it's just about, you know, how do we create a more modern experience that matches baseball, football, and to get more fans involved in it so that they can grow the sport.
And real quick, you could pivot to horse racing. I'm just saying, with the role with the splashes, you know, the horse is picking up. So, I mean.
No, I mean, like for us, my end goal is to try to get into every single sport possible. And strategically, business-wise, I felt like there's this term, atomic network, in which I really believe in, and just like focusing on niche sports and building that community there, to then maybe go into the bigger sports. Because those, I mean, right now we're three guys, you know, trying to build this thing out, and we can't really compete with those other guys. But for right now, if we work on these smaller network sports, we could grow, build strength and community, and then be able to compete later on.
Okay, one more question.
I'm just curious, when you guys got started with this, did you like start building your model with like a boat out in a pool and like with a camera measuring the splashes yourself?
No, so that'd be interesting, especially here in Vegas. We would have to go to Lake Las Vegas for that. But no, mainly me, I ended up, you know, just taking the videos from overnight, the company that we're working with. I just screen recorded them, and then I literally just like hours and hours and hours, just like, you know, annotating each image. So.
All right. So JJ, thank you so much. What's the company name?
Oh, Check It. My company name is Check It. Check It. Yeah. CHEKKET. Yeah.
Love to hear Vegas startup doing interesting things. Yeah. So everybody, we're going to break now. It's time for lunch.